So for this week's live match, we are heading to Barby Banks for my first match of the year at Barby Banks. Great fishery, near Rugby, and it's a venue that I go to quite a bit in the summer because it offers something a little bit different. Snake lakes for carp. You can use your own pellets, which I like because I like to prepare my pellets in advance and all that. But it's just a really good fishery, plenty of carp to catch. Just enjoyable fishing, and it's quite simple. It's not a place where you need loads of bait and loads of different natural baits or anything like that. It's really simple. For this one I drew peg 35, which is actually a really narrow little peg, and I must admit when I've been fishing really tough the weekend before, obviously we were in that transition period where the fish are starting to spawn and the fish were in a right horrible mood, and certainly at the weekend the fishing had been poor. In fact, Dave Cleaver, who runs the matches, caught one carp on my peg on the Saturday. This match was on the Tuesday, and while I didn't expect it to be that hard, I didn't expect it to be that good neither. Now, peg 35 is, like I said, a real narrow little peg really. It's 10 metres wide, and it's one of the only ones on the venue. I've never drawn it before, but I walk past it every time I go to a match, and it's really shallow. It's about 15 inches, a metre off the bank, far bank that is, which is unusual at this venue. Normally the islands are undercut, 3 foot deep, but this one actually offers some shallow water. And it's one of those pegs that now having fished it, I'd love to draw it in another 3 or 4 weeks when the fishing's really on the up. However, it kind of felt a bit limiting. Where I'd drawn, like there was no depth to my right anywhere, and the only place with any sort of decent kind of depth was all to my left. There was a willow tree to my left, which was like 5 foot deep next to. That looked good for a few bites. And then I had this reed bed to my left, really close in, just on the top kit, 1 section, 2 sections, and then there's a rope, so I couldn't go any further than that. But that reed bed looked like it'd hold some fish, and I was convinced I'd probably catch it, tick over against that reed bed. Now, for the day I set up a few different rigs. I set up a 0.3 Diablo for that left hand margin, which also doubled up as a rig for my right hand margin. In the right hand edge there was a really shallow little spot, 15 inches. I plumbed up there, and it was a rig that doubled up for the far bank as well, which was a 0.4 Diablo with a little bulk, like a classic mudline setup. And I intended to fish expanders and micros on that, and the mudline on the far side. So I set up a 0.3 Diablo with strung out shot for my hard pellet fishing. That would double up for my left hand margin, and then my right hand margin away from the bank a bit. Then I had that shallow mudline set up in case it went down that route. I also set up a rig for the deeper water, which was a 4x14 Cypri, lovely little float, which had a band on it. I intended just to fish 6mm pellets on it, and my rig for the margins also doubled up there was one spot where I had 3 foot of water across, which is the depth I like to fish at on this venue, and I had a little spot for that. But I kicked off on that rig up against these sedges, tapped in a few 4mm, and I think I caught a skimmer, a roach and a little tench, but no sign of any carp. Normally you get bites from carp pretty quickly on this venue, certainly signs are in your peg, and I just didn't get any. I think they just weren't there. It was so shallow. So I decided I'll start fishing the mudline, and I just went in with some micros. There was a lovely little hole in the far bank with some overhanging grass and stuff. It's a bit awkward to fish, but I thought even on a hard day there's got to be some fish over there. Went in, and an odd fish was coming in. I started to catch an odd fish, but it was like really hard mudline fishing, if that makes sense. I was feeding it and it would take forever for a fish to come in, and eventually you'd either catch it or you'd spook it. Really tough fishing actually. Now I'm just going to take a moment to interrupt the video. A whopping 72% of you guys watching haven't subscribed to my channel yet. Now it's completely free to do so, and I'm one of the very few anglers left on YouTube that does the whole library completely free. There's no membership section, there's no subscription service where you've got to pay for it or anything like that. All my content is totally free. So all I ask is that you give my channel a subscribe. It's completely free to do so, and it ensures that you never miss another video, and it ensures that more people get to see my videos in the long run too. So I hope you continue enjoying this video, but do me a favour, press that subscribe button. It was quite enjoyable though. It was like set your little trap, wait and wait and wait, and then one would come in and you was like really pitting your wits against the fish. It sounds a bit funny, but that was just how I felt like it was. The float was perfect. That 0.4 Diablo sits there beautiful. Really good floats they are for that game. But it kind of slow. My friend Dan Webb rang me up and he says there's not a lot getting caught. Vinnie Atkinson on peg, I think he was on 12 or 14. He was catching a few fish, certainly an early leader. But yeah, it was tough going. So then I started to sort of rotate swims. I've been throwing an odd 6mm pellet up against these reeds to my left and up against this tree, and I'm talking 2 at a time. I found on Barby, when it's hard, if you just feed really frugally with 6mm pellets, you will catch. Like, I'm not saying it's a match winning method, but you will catch. You'll tick over, and I felt like that's what I needed to do, just tick over. So I started just doing that over a couple of spots, just those little bits of 6mm pellet, moving between the tree and that left hand edge, and I could get one bite and then I'd have to move. I'd catch one, move, catch one, move, and I would sort of got myself into a little routine of going down my left hand margin, getting one, maybe missing a bite next chuck, but getting one, come off it, leave it alone, go to that tree, catch a fish, leave it alone. And then I also had one off my right hand margin because I thought if I can rotate 3 spots doing that, it'd be okay. And it was, I was just ticking over, and I got to sort of 20 odd pound, and I thought maybe even 30 pound at sort of a couple of hours in. I thought, well, that's all right. It's not easy, but I'm ticking over. And then Martin Davis came past and he says, oh, one of the local anglers, and he said, Vinnie Atkinson's got over £50 now, and a couple of us have admitted to 40 odd pounds. So I thought, well, I need to sort of up the ante a bit here. I can't just keep, even though the peg needed me to fish negative, I felt like I needed to push the peg. So I started putting a bigger pot of micros on against that mud line. And I thought, if there's any fish feeding, they're gonna go to that spot in search of bait. And I had a little run. Like I say, it wasn't easy, but it was like things were starting to happen. They were coming in a bit more. But the problem I was having, when they were coming in, I couldn't catch them. I'd get the classic, you'd feed, you could see a fish come wobbling in, and it'd bow wave off, and I thought, I know what these want, they want paste. So I quickly got off my box and I set up a paste rig, JC margin paste, really, really nice little float for that. And it was a bit overgrown and stuff, so I thought, it's going to be awkward to fish this, but I'm more confident with a piece of paste on than anything else when they're feeding in that way. And I caught a couple on it, but I also missed a few bites and ended up in the bush and all sorts. I thought, right, what I'm doing is probably the right thing, but I need to do it somewhere else. So what I did, I plumbed up again, and directly in front of me there was a little alcove, which at the start of the match, when I knew it was going to be a really tough day, it looked like the worst place in the world to fish, because it just looked like, why would a fish go there? But now I had some fish in the swim, it looked like a good place to fish, because that alcove almost meant that only one fish could get in at a time, if that makes sense. So I plumbed up, and it was the same depth, felt clean with a plummet, and I quickly got off my box. I actually mixed up a little bit of just crushed expander. It's all I had ground bait wise, because I thought it's one of those days where these fish need a bit of ground bait in the water to colour the water up rather than just micros. Some days they'll come to micros no problem, but some days when they're a bit on the back foot, the fish are a bit not really up for it, a bit of ground bait clouding up the water can really help. So I just mixed up a quick little bit of crushed expander, because it's all I had. Mixed that 50-50 with a micro, started potting it on the mud line and just left it for a bit, just let it do its thing. Carried on, I thought the track would kick off, but it never did. And then the left hand margin was quite good. I could always drop on that and catch some fish. It was never going to be a match winning line, but it was quite good. Again, I tried to up the ante, putting more bait in, and it didn't really work. So heading into the sort of last hour, and I can see an odd fish coming into this far bank line, and I thought, I'm actually going to get a bit of a good last hour here. And that's kind of what happened. I was fishing that paste over there, exactly the same as I do with the margin. Float sort of sat over like that, potting my bait in, nice big blob of paste, covering the pot with ground bait, potting it in and just waiting. And sure enough, we would get a response, like I'd either foul hook it or I'd catch it. It was just a tough day, but I ended up catching like 8 or 9 more carp in that last hour on this. And it kind of made me wish I'd pushed my peg earlier and tried it a bit earlier, because I think I could have probably got a decent run of action on that. So anyway, I ended up with a surprising £89, which was 4th on the day. Vinny went on and won with, he had 120 odd. Was it 120 odd? 128 or 129? There was 120, a low 120, about 100 and some, 103, and then there was my weight. So relatively pleased with that. 4th on the day. Would have took that at the start actually, off that peg. Like I say, it's a peg that can really produce, but on that day when the fish aren't feeding, it just seemed a bit hemmed in, to be honest with you. And certainly the chap to my right had a really tough day, and the chap to my left had a really tough day, so it never felt like there was a lot of fish there. But saying that, the last hour there were quite a few fish there, so probably needed to do things a little bit different in that last hour, but you know, easily said when you're in hindsight. Probably should have pushed my peg from about 1 o'clock rather than waiting until that last hour and a half, but you live and learn. Hindsight's the best angler in the world, isn't he? So yeah, thanks for watching everyone. Hope you enjoyed that one, and we'll see you again in the next video.